Turning you loose. How loose? Carlos Reyes. How's that for loose? It's your chance to get even for your family. Who's gonna help us start a war?
With who?
Everyone.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong.
All right.
All right. I'm Reese. To my left is...
David.
Further off to my left...
Irina.
Across from me...
Isabella.
Also known as...
Reyes.
Noah.
Isabella Reyes.
And getting in fights with schoolgirls during lunchtime we have...
Wait, that was me.
AJ.
You seemed a little
AJ.
reluctant to admit
I'm at the
that.
principal's office. I can't talk right now.
You really showed him, huh?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They called you a narco.
And today we're talking about Sicario, Day of the Soldado. That means this movie is called Assassin, Day of the Soldier, if you want to translate it perfectly.
Assassin's Day of the Soldier.
I knew Mr. Rogers had a storied background, but A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood didn't really seem that violent.
The only thing you took from that was day. That was your connection.
Although I will have to argue, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood does sound like a violent movie.
It does, like you're in downtown
It
Los
sounds
Angeles.
like it sounds like a Die Hard subtitle.
I don't know.
Die Hard.
Prince
They
Tuesday
love
really boils
irony.
my blood.
The movie is directed by Stefano Sollima, who also directed Sabura, which y'all have not heard of. I take it.
Nope.
This is his previous film. It was well reviewed, and I looked it up. I had not heard of it. He's also the creator of two not well known, but well regarded TV shows, Gomorrah and 000, and he's the director on the upcoming film Without Remorse. The movie stars Benicio Del Toro, Josh Brolin, Isabella Moner, Jeffrey Donovan, Manuel Garcia Rolfo, and Catherine Keener. And it's written, again, by Taylor Sheridan, who wrote the first film. For those that are new to this podcast, on this podcast we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So guys, had y'all seen Sicario, Day of the Soldado, before your prep for this episode? David?
I saw it when it first came out in theaters. I think in the past couple years I saw Sicario for the first time, and when I saw that the second one was coming out, I hopped right on board.
Irina?
Yep. We saw it at Alamo Drafthouse. And I remember instigating that because I like Benicio Del Toro.
She does.
And
Kind of weird.
it's not weird.
So this
He's
was not
very
you didn't
charismatic.
watch it because you enjoyed the first one. You were like, nope,
Here's
Benicio Del Toro.
the weird thing. I think in the back of my mind, the name Sicario was familiar, but I kind of ignored it. And I was like, hey, this looks like a fun action movie. And
So
then
you see
upon
this one
sitting-
before you saw the first?
No,
Okay.
I saw Sicario first, but it had been a while since I last watched it. And then as I'm sitting in the theater, I realized, oh yeah, this is a sequel. Because, it didn't do Sicario 2 or anything. It was just... But I remember that was
At least
a fun
not in the
experience.
States.
Yeah. Noah,
No, I had not seen.
what was the accent there? You're
I don't
carrying
know.
over your character
I
from
have
when you
not
introduced
seen.
yourself.
He's not allowed to see movies after dark.
You had not seen this. If I recall, you had not seen the first one when we first talked about it, so it would only make sense it had not seen this one.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Okay, so that is true. Had not seen it. AJ, how about you?
Yes, I had, albeit delayed after it came out. This movie was surprisingly difficult to track down on 4K Blu-ray disc.
There is a 4K version of it, though?
I think I finally found it with a digital copy.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Awesome. I had seen this movie as well. I saw it in theaters because I was already a huge fan of the first one, as we already know. I don't have anything else to add to that because I would be giving away my opinion of this movie. So, with all that said, David, you want to give us our call to action here?
All right, everybody. We do this podcast because we love movies, and you're listening to it because you love movies. And if you want to keep hearing us talk about these movies, you guys can support us, I think. Right, Reese? Can they do that?
Yeah, they can support us.
Wait, okay. I think they can support us on Apple Podcasts. I think if you give us a 5-star
why do you
review,
think you know this?
I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm figuring out. I'm just making it up as I go. We also have an Instagram. We also have
I
YouTube.
think you can click a like button on a YouTube video.
I
think you can press the download button on the latest episode.
I think you can give us a 5-star and leave us a really good review and maybe follow us on Instagram and not Twitter. Maybe.
Or maybe follow on Twitter and not Instagram because
one of those things.
You know, I run the Twitter and he runs the Instagram.
I don't think it matters because I'm just going to lose this battle. It's a losing battle.
Yes.
No
thank you.
one.
All that helps with our numbers.
Tell your friends.
Yes, tell your friends.
Word of mouth.
Tell your neighbors.
Tell your dog.
Tell everyone. All right, with all that said, AJ, you want to give us that story?
It's a nice day for a drive, huh?
Oh, beautiful day. Blue sky, large caliber weapons. I love getting out of the office.
Take him out!
Ooh, you're gonna need stitches.
Lucky for me, I'll still need him tomorrow.
Next week, the president's adding drug cartels to the list of terrorist organizations.
You want to see this thing through? I'm gonna have to get dirty. You're gonna help us start a war. With who? Everyone. They need Blackhawks, strike teams, attack drones.
Where's the coup?
Mexico.
You gotta be kidding.
Is that your brother? Because I don't want to kill the pool guy. Now that we got the cartels at each other's throats, secret won't keep long.
But I create a black cloud from the trap house to a fat crowd. They like wax, how you got
A terrorist suicide bombing in a Kansas City grocery store kills 15 people. In response, the United States government orders CIA operative Matt Graver to apply extreme measures to combat Mexican drug cartels who are suspected of smuggling the terrorists across the U.S.-Mexico border. Graver and the Department of Defense decide the best option is to instigate a war between the major cartels, and Graver recruits operative Alejandro Gillick for the mission. Graver also meets with PMC official weapons trafficker Andy Wilden to secure mercenaries, helicopters, and military-grade communication equipment in order for the U.S. to maintain plausible deniability while combating the Mexican cartels.
So a couple things you notice pretty much right off the bat getting into this movie. It looks different, and there's no Emily Blunt.
I don't know how much different
Sad.
it looks because I think they grabbed the tone pretty well.
No,
Yeah.
here's one of the things. This movie opens on it's nighttime, and these guys are getting assassinated. And one thing about the other movie, which was photographed by Roger Deakins, I believe, it used natural lighting a lot more, even for the nighttime scenes. Like it would use just the very low lights of the dusk in the background to silhouette the operatives. And when it did have to go completely pitch dark, they had the night vision. There was no moment ever when there was like artificial lighting. Yeah, in this one, it's off the bat. You see the artificial lighting. You have that blue sheen over everything. That's just it's kind of casting light that you don't like. Nothing. It didn't seem as real to me.
Right.
But that's it's still fine.
I
Like
think
I thought it was more than fine. I thought it was pretty tasteful. I mean, it is different in technique, but I thought it looked good.
yeah, and I'm not really arguing against this movie. I'm more just saying it is obviously different. It's like it is a different look.
Call me an idiot because I didn't notice.
Okay.
Well, in David's
You're an
defense, I
idiot.
think they deliberately tried to capture the style or the feel of it in a lot of things. So
I think along with basically the lighting you're talking about and everything, there's an overall theme that's still similar, but it has been, it does feel a little more Hollywood. This feels very much more tailored to a fun movie experience. Like, fun, not necessarily what fun usually means, but
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean.
whereas the first one was a suspenseful, thrilling drama almost with like interspersed action scenes. This one is an action movie.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
interspersed
Like
drama.
they made a very they made a call on that, and I think that's the best thing you can do when you're a director taking up the mantle for a film is trying to maintain good elements from the previous one. You don't want to tear that apart, but at the same time, you don't want to completely replicate what they did before you. So you have to kind of make it your own, but they were true to the characters at least. So
Yeah,
you
I
just
didn't feel
upgrade
like they
from-
steered.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I didn't feel like they steered too much into the action. I mean, there was action, but
Well, compared to
I
the
never-
first movie,
I-
there's
yeah.
definitely more.
well, there's a good
It's
chunk of
different.
action. It's just different
It's
sorts
different,
of
yeah.
action.
Yeah. Anyway, more importantly, at the beginning of this movie, this Emily Blunt's character is not in this movie at all. How do you think this affects the tone of the movie? Like, do you think it loses that kind of moral grounding because she's not here? When it's just focusing on Matt Graver and Alejandro Gillick, who are very morally gray characters, is it lacking a heart because of that, or do you think it works?
that's a very good question, because I think it makes sense that she's not in this, because based on the way it ended before, I don't think she would go back there again. Like, she can't deal with that. But this almost feels like they decided to pull the curtain back a bit, because in the first you feel a little in the dark about how things operate.
Yeah.
Now it's almost like, all right, now we're going to throw you in everything they deal with,
Yes.
you know?
On that point, I don't necessarily think they lost like that moral stance that they seemed to have in the first one, but it was kind of just like they took that out of it, and it was
There is no morality
Well,
in this movie.
well. The point I'm saying is like they all have their own morality, and he's definitely not a great guy, and
I will
He
what's his
counter that,
name?
and I don't think they completely removed it. I think they twisted it. And whereas before we had the B story with the officer and his family, we have another parallel where we cut to this young guy who's joining cartel and going through initiation and stuff.
Yeah, Miguel,
But he
I
kind
think
of
is his name.
he kind of takes on that centralist, I guess, morality surrogate for the audience, because he's clearly doing stuff that's not right, but he also seems like he's conflicted or has one foot on the good side as well.
The point I was gonna make though is not that like there's no moral conundrum in this. It's more that they took that part of it from the first one where that kind of has that front seat of it being this is like what is okay, what's not okay. And in this one it kind of goes a different route of like, well, it has that on the back burner rather than it being
I know what you mean.
I think that
the major point of the movie.
it was actually I asked this knowing why they actually did this, but I just wanted to get y'all's thoughts.
Yeah.
How
This
dare
was
you.
the director and the writer's choice to not include Emily Blunt's character because, for one, she has a complete arc in the first story, and it would be kind of weird for her to show up in this movie where you're kind of diving deeper into the belly of the beast and really seeing how all the machinery works. And these other two characters, Graver and Gillick, I feel like has a more complete arc in the first movie too, but there's still stones that are left to be turned over to see what is there.
I did like
So
how
that's
they're like, you have more stones to
pretty
turn
much
over.
What I
Yeah.
said.
You nailed it.
Yeah,
Look at that.
you're right.
That means they carried their message across.
But then my
pretty
question
well.
though is do you feel like it's missing something, or does it feel it still works?
I feel like it's missing something, personally.
I think
disagree.
that the first one is a complete story, and I think there was a message that it wanted to put out there. It feels like beating a dead horse if you try to do that again with a second film. So I kind of like that they shifted, and they're focusing on characters you didn't get to see more of.
Yeah.
So
and I am personally kind of in the middle between David and AJ here. Where I think that I do kind of miss seeing like the Emily Blunt character. I don't remember her name.
Kate. Yeah.
But I do think they insert two other characters here, Miguel and what's her name?
Isabella.
As, okay, these are more of like they kind of fill that role of like one's kind of, neutral evil, one's kind of neutral good.
Wait, which one's the
I
neutral
think
good?
they're both neutral evil.
Isabella
Is she?
she
What
doesn't.
does she do?
She doesn't do anything
She does
bad.
nothing.
She doesn't do anything
She actually
bad.
does. She gets in a fight with a girl and then kind of like manipulates the principal in a very negative way.
The way these characters are framed, though, I would say Miguel is. I don't know.
No, he's
okay.
questionable, and
I'd
she
say-
is just a slightly
I'd
less
say
questionable.
I'd say the point of her character is that she's a kid and she's been thrust into a situation where her dad is this huge, powerful cartel leader.
Yeah, she's the
And-
human MacGuffin, the thing that everyone's after.
And
It's the sympathy draw.
Yeah, and I think she does have her own morals, and maybe she was just defensive. You didn't get to see the whole picture at the beginning,
Yeah.
but it shows that she's actually a somewhat caring person
Does it?
Yeah.
through her influence from.
Well, on
The
the
other
journey,
guy. Yeah.
she does learn a little bit from Alejandro. I think that personally, I think they should have painted her in a better light in the beginning because they make her seem kind of like a douche.
I
Because
agree.
she's the daughter of a drug lord.
You
How
can be a
else could
daughter of
she
a
be?
drug lord and still be a good person. It is
No,
possible.
but the thing is, like, in that kind of position,
contextual.
nobody likes you. Like, she probably doesn't have any friends, you know? Like, that's not an enviable position, even though she's in a boarding school or, like, getting, the best of life, quote unquote.
Okay, look, I'm not saying it's not realistic. I think you could also write another realistic version that would allow you to fall for her character a little bit better.
We're gonna have chances to dissect these
Yeah.
characters more because they're really not a big part of this first section
Right.
here. So before we move on, let's talk about the setup to this movie's story. We have a couple of bombings at the beginning, kind of terrorist
Yeah.
bombings. And then we learn that the U.S. is trying to instigate a war between two cartels in Mexico, and they're going to use Matt Graver and his team to do that, to kidnap Isabella.
Put the whole
Do all
hand to
that.
the American military.
How do we feel about this plot in this movie?
To me, it's a little too confusing off the bat.
Yeah.
I get so tired of the terrorist narrative, and it's barely even a narrative in this. It's just kind of
The motivational catalyst.
a motivation, and I don't know. Like, that's just my opinion
No.
on that.
I agree with you. I thought that if anything's the weak point in this, it was the kind of American governmental motivation,
Like
or
the secretary coming in and being like, "It's gonna be dirty."
I don't.
We're
I
Gonna
don't
get the whole
I
hand to
don't
the
mind-
American military.
I think that they wouldn't. It just felt too artificial to me, that situation, because no one really knows how those conversations go down.
Yeah.
I guess they can't really replicate how it would be, but it felt like too much like the officials, like, we know we're doing evil and go ahead and do it.
Okay.
That's one of the. Go ahead.
Well, to counter your point, one of the biggest things people talk about with, say, House of Cards is how you almost feel like you're watching a documentary. I feel kind of the same way about this. I mean, it's ugly, but I mean, I don't think it was too far-fetched.
I don't think it's
maybe
far-fetched.
it was
no.
maybe it was characterized a little bit for stylizing it, but I thought it helped with the flow and the motivation of the story.
Yeah, and one thing to say, if you are looking at this movie through the lens of action movie with moments of drama, like it's a genre shift that if you're on board with that shift from the first movie, this is what any good action movie would have a scene like this, where it's just kind of expository and you're just learning what the plot is. It's a little, I think it's a little clunky, so I'm kind of between y'all again. Here I am, not picking a side, but
Let's roll back before all that. First movie gets you hooked literally in the gut. You feel that blood drain out of you with the bodies in the wall. At least I did. It gets you on a visceral level. This movie, they were going for the same approach with the explosions. When the mom, it was dumb, like walking towards the terrorist.
Oh, Dave
with
and I
the
were
daughter.
talking about that too.
But the daughter, watching that and the explosion and seeing her dying, I mean, that had a pretty profound effect on me.
It did.
Hooking me in the gut. So, I mean, I think that's where they were going. That's what their approach was from.
I think
and then they're just taking off, from the first one with Matt's character.
Right. I think that's like, I think everyone has kind of different perspectives on how this was laid out. But for me, it's, as a consumer of a film like this, it's confusing to start off with, this is the trek from Mexico into the United States. They're trying to stop these people. Then they find that there are terrorists among their group and they explode. And now we are looking at terrorists blowing up a convenience store or a shop, I guess. But then going back to a narrative that has to do with people working with drug cartels. I get why. I think it's supposed to get more of a government involvement in the scenario because otherwise it wouldn't be a huge concern for them. But it's just, it kind of throws me off because then that's not quite picked up the same way.
What's interesting about it, though, and it is complicated, but what they're trying to show is how the government will try to latch on, will try to show motivations for what they're doing on the slimmest of truths.
Right.
So it's like, the cartels are responsible for this. We learned it was terrorists.
Controlling a narrative.
Yeah, but what we're just going to, this is the one thing we can grasp onto that kind of allows us to do this. So we're just going to roll with it.
Yeah, I guess there's so much television and movies that are always throwing in a Middle Eastern terrorist, I just get kind of sick of seeing it. So like that always puts like a negative taste or like a bad taste in my mouth when I see it.
Yeah.
Because it feels like low-hanging fruit, So I mean, I know they used it in an appropriate manner, I guess, but it just always kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
I'm in a similar boat. I think that they could have done a little better with that. Particularly, I like the effect that it has on the story and the movie's narrative. It's really interesting to have it be, the government kind of causing a infighting between cartels, or at least that's the working plan. But it just felt too much like it disconnected from the Sicario world to me.
I think, but that's what the point of what they're saying is. You have these actions of these terrorists that are inconsequential to almost the actions of the government, because the rest of the story doesn't really even revolve around those terrorist explosions.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just using that as a motivation.
Point later on when they find the carpets by the border, but other than that, they kind of drop it a little bit.
Either way, it's like that we have disagreements on it, but also like it just seems like we aren't all on board.
Yeah.
So.
I guess we should move on. AJ, do you want to read the next 2 paragraphs, maybe?
Gillick assassinates a high-profile lawyer of the Matamoros cartel in Mexico City, while Graver and his team captures Isabel Reyes, the daughter of the kingpin of the Matamoros' rival Carlos Reyes. Graver, Gillick, and their team take Isabel to a safe house in Texas. They stage a DEA raid and pretend to rescue her, making her believe that she had been captured by the Matamoros cartel. They take her to an American military base, while the team organizes her return to Mexico. They plan to leave her behind in a Mexican federal police depot located inside territory controlled by her father's rivals to further escalate the intercartel conflict. However, after they cross into Mexico, the police escort turns against them and attack the American armored vehicles. Graver and his team kill 25 corrupt Mexican policemen to escape the ambush.
So what is it called that Gillick is doing? Is that like fanning the trigger? Like, what is that?
Oh, yeah, where he just like clicks it as fast as he can.
Yeah.
Well, what is that called? I thought AJ would know what that is because he knows everything.
It's kind of bump firing, but not with... So you can... What he's doing is a lot of times you actually have like a pipe or like a hose around your finger to fill the trigger guard. Yeah. But he's basically simulating automatic fire, and that helps sell the image of as a drive-by.
Crime activity.
Instead of, just a single well-placed shot killing him. It makes it look messier.
That's a lot smarter than what this scene looks like on surface level. Like, because when I saw that in the trailer for this movie and then saw it in the movie, I was just like, he wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like, he wouldn't fire his gun
See,
like that.
that's the thing though. That's how good he is and this movie is about establishing a character. In a lot of movies you would be very confused, but in this one you're all like, there has to be a reason.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And yeah, so this is also, I guess, where we're introduced to Isabella officially. Miguel was already kind of introduced in the last section. What do we think of her?
I don't mind her. I like her. There's not really much to glean yet, except that she's the daughter of someone that is well established and also involved in drug trade.
Yeah.
I feel like that her school fight scene where we're first introduced to her is the first moment in this movie where I was like, this is definitely not like the first Sicario movie. The way she's introduced, it was I already knew this felt different because it's a different director, but the school fight scene, I'm like, this wouldn't be in the first film. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, like, okay, this is a different vibe for this movie.
All right, but then compare it to Colombiana.
No, it's totally
And like that young girl.
He's not saying anything negative.
I'm not
He's
saying
just
it's
trying
bad.
He's trying to point out a difference in
this is an
directing.
internal argument I had with myself watching this whole movie to just kind of, okay, this is the sequel to Sicario, directed by someone differently. It's an action movie, not a suspenseful thriller drama. I'm going to meet this movie in the middle, and you know, how does that work? Like, and I think it plays well. This movie it's good.
No,
I
I
like it.
agree. To me, I almost it's weird connecting this one directly to the first Sicario because it is kind of a tonal shift.
Yeah, because I feel like Benicio Del Toro, his performance is more in line with what this movie is asking for. Like he has more lines, he does more in this movie. He's less of the silent hitman than he was in the first one. So he's like meeting this movie where it is as this action movie. Whereas Matt Graver or Josh Brolin, his performance to me still seems stuck in the first one.
Yeah.
Really?
And I think his performance is excellent. Believe me. I actually really like Josh Brolin in this, but he's like very consistent, one-to-one.
I thought he expanded a little bit.
He expands a little bit in the end. Like, I think he starts to change into something different at the end of this movie. But yeah,
So
He subtly upgraded from flip-flops to Crocs.
I was gonna say that.
I love how obvious that was, like, especially in the beginning. You just props
They
his
nod
feet
to
up.
the waterboarding, and then they force him to watch.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
There is some subtlety where they expand that, and that's necessary because we have, two main characters as opposed to three. But, drawing the connection to the first one with Isabel, she still kind of takes that middle surrogate position Kate had, where they do a good job. She establishes, presence in this film right off the bat with the fight, but then, she becomes the kind of the conflicted person who's trying to adapt and figure out where their place is on one side or the other. So, there's still that connection there, even though overall this movie is more of an action telling
I love
kind of thing.
the decision as far as how to portray her character, because at first you see her as a little smug, probably just friendless and not really loving her life, but she hasn't been in direct contact with anything real, nothing extreme yet until she's kidnapped. And I think I enjoy that immediate jump. Not that I love seeing her like distressed. It's more like that's realistic. There are so many movies that kind of play this tough girl character who's all like, oh, I've seen worse. It's like clearly you haven't. You don't know how to play that.
I love the shot that's close up on her face as the car is reversing as they're being attacked.
Yeah.
And the other car comes up from behind. Like,
and it feels very real, and I commend the actress there. I think she does a really good job too. Like she's terrified and pleading basically the whole time. So
yeah. I was ready to be annoyed with her character, and I thought she was just going to be a bother the whole time. But then they immediately threw in that kidnapping right after that, and I was like, okay, all right. Yeah, she definitely just got a big old slap on the wrist for talking to that principal, and now we're way square.
No, the thing is, like, I was never bothered by her. I think I understood her, and in fact, I don't think she deserved any of the trauma that she got.
No, she didn't.
I disagree, because we don't even know the context of this fight. Maybe the other girl was, like, instigating.
Dude, imagine
She's a child.
Imagine how frightening that would be.
Yeah.
But I like the way she's written so far, because she's not unrealistically overly smug, but she's also she's terrified enough, but also intelligent. Like she's picking up on her surroundings. Like she's keeping an eye on things when she does or is able to. So
for the most
I
part,
like
to me, it seems realistic because it's a child who's scared whose MO is how do I get out of this alive? That is her.
But she's intelligent.
Movie.
Yeah. So I like it.
So then I guess we should subtly pivot over to the other child actor in this, Miguel, played by Elijah Rodriguez.
I hate this kid.
No, I wanted to. Yeah,
I wanted to punch him so bad.
The thing is though, that he's a good little actor.
Yeah, he is.
You know, like the whole time I was like, I want to reach into the screen and strangle this guy.
He looks like someone I worked with. But like,
Okay, before we go too far off the cliff here,
Yeah.
I think it did a good job of portraying. He's got this home life, as they did in the first, and he's got this double life, and there's kind of that dichotomy, and this is the real situation, and that, even McAllen, like being there, there's stuff that's just
It's right on the border.
sketchy. So that is the reality of living in that kind of world. That context is nothing is straightforward.
What was his motivation? I guess I kind of lost that.
he wanted to make more money than his pops.
When you have, the driving of the economy is the gangs and stuff like that. I mean, any kind of initiation, they get kids. I mean, if you watch like Gran Torino or something like that, like they take good kids and they recruit them and stuff like that. And that's because their family's in it. Everyone they know, that's how you have power. That's where you get anywhere.
Yeah. And his motivation too was like he's got this cool older mentor who's like wanting to take him under his wing. And hey, this guy's got a cool car. He
making lots of money.
He gives him beers, gives him smokes. It's like, I want to be part of that life.
And yet at the same time, he respects like his mother, and like he's trying to take care of his siblings and stuff like that. So that's just how that way of life is in that world.
Yeah, and I actually think I think he's mostly a silent performance, but I think he does a good job of kind of just making you kind of hate him a little bit, but also not, in the end, kind of coming around to him a little bit.
He's at a very impressionable age.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I was more annoyed with just his bad decisions.
I think he makes a couple of good decisions in the end.
Yeah, like
shoot it. Well, spoilers.
Yeah. We'll get there.
We'll talk about it.
But I think, introduction, as far as that goes, I was immediately reminded of Sicario, the first film, and the police's story. Although with that one, it's a little more
foreboding.
You're unsure what exactly the situation is, and it kind of reveals itself later. So in this, you now that you've seen that, you anticipate what's happening, especially when he's picked up by the car instead of the school bus.
Yeah, the second movie definitely doesn't pull off the seeding the tension really as well as the first.
And I don't think it's trying to either. Yeah. It's just they have a different style they're going for.
Yeah. So let's talk about the kidnapping of Isabel. I actually really enjoyed this whole sequence here. I liked how they, kind of staged this scene where she's been kidnapped and she's taken to this location, and then they're like, okay, now let's make it sound like someone's breaking into the house, and it's really just Alejandro Gillick again, just coming in and being like, we got another one here, and he's kind of doing a little bit of an American accent.
Yeah.
There's another one in here.
Yep. But I thought that was all really well done. This is also where you get some of those moments where she's, kind of questioning what's happening. She's being very observant of everything Alejandro Gillick is doing. Maybe too observant for a kid her age, But because for me, I would just be like pissing in my shorts and just like, whatever you say, sir.
Well, it's like I could imagine like being the daughter of someone as powerful as her father. Like she's probably supposed to like keep an eye on things, like she knows the area as far as like cops aren't exactly what cops are supposed to be, like you can't really trust anybody. So like I get that. I think she's trying to be aware.
Yeah.
But so after this,
Okay.
we end up having this political faux pas where they accidentally kill 25 Mexican
Yes,
police.
the political faux
Yeah.
pas.
Whoops. to be fair, they were attacked.
Yeah, they were attacked first.
As Matt said.
So this was actually one of the carryovers from the other that you would have had to see the first Sicario. Not you wouldn't have had to, but it helps to have seen the first Sicario to see this one, where they did allude to police being bad. They can be bad as well. Anyone can be bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And that comes to fruition here as in the convoy when they hit the dirt road. The police literally turn their guns on Graver and his crew. That first big blown out action sequence here.
So one of the things that I was confused about in this section was I thought because they staged all this other stuff that this was a staged attack. Like when I first saw this.
Me too.
I was confused because I'm like, wow, they're going all out on this. Like this is a really weird people are getting shot.
No, I was led to believe there's a staged portion later on, and this happened before they could get there.
But it didn't.
So-
it was hard to tell.
I have just one small thing that I was like, like why? Is you would have thought that Graver would be anticipating something like this, seeing as they anticipated all this sort of stuff in the first one.
He was anticipating it. He always is.
Okay, then why didn't they have a way for what's her name to be trapped in the car?
Well, they're in Humvees.
Then-
I mean, they are always expecting some sort of attack.
Yeah. Okay. But they were expecting it, and yet they didn't really prepare for it.
Well, where else would they put her?
So I think the thing about this whole scenario and being in this space is that there's always risk, and you just have to deal with it as it happens. So that kind of is why the first Sicario is so tense, because you feel like, shouldn't there be more protection for this? And they do have protection, but it's kind of, you're just entering at your own risk.
Yeah, I thought this scene was so well done though to me, where they're just shooting at the bulletproof windshield, and I'm expecting any one of those bullets to go through and kill the driver specifically, the Donovan, the guy played by Ray Donovan. I was like, this guy's toast. He survives, but still, it was like a good thing this director does is he preserves the thing from the first film where I felt like anyone could die, where like no one feels safe. I could have seen any one of these people dying except for Isabel. Like I knew she was like safe.
Yeah. I didn't fully feel that with this one, and honestly, that does not reflect my opinion on the movie being lesser. I just see this as a different movie, and to me, it was a lot less tense.
That might be because they, like AJ mentioned before, they don't seed the tension, So you could be anticipating a narrative happening, and because your brain is kind of working through that, you can sort of see who's going to be preserved, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think I just felt that Graver's not going to be in danger, Isabella's not going to be in danger, Alejandro's not going to be in danger.
Really?
Okay, the ones I care about are not going to be in danger, so the tension was somewhat lost. for me.
I honestly thought that one of the main characters was going to die in this the first time I saw it.
That scene?
I don't know if that scene specifically.
That's what we're talking about.
Well, I mean, I think they could have. Like, I wouldn't have doubted it. Let me put it that way. I think they easily could have.
I agree with you, Noah, but I also agree with you, David, because I do feel like watching this film, there is that sense someone's going to die,
Yeah.
But in that scene, that felt more like a turning point in plot. So it felt like that was necessary to happen without main casualties.
Yeah.
So, but it would lead to main casualties.
Yeah, and actually, this is where I think this movie's second half is better than its first.
I agree.
Yeah, because the first half of this movie, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
But the whole time I was going like, yeah, this isn't as good as the first one.
I deeply
And then the
agree.
second one, when this pivot turns and the story changes, the girl escapes. I was like, okay, now it's cooking.
Right.
But that happens in the next plot portion, so I guess...
Is it cooking because it's in a desert in
Yes.
It's hot.
Texas, Mexico?
and the
Dinner's
movie
ready.
is the movie is
Tex-Mex.
eggs. Yes. AJ, do you want to continue with the story?
Amidst the chaos, Isabel runs away into the desert. Gillick goes after her alone while the rest of the team returns to the United States. Meanwhile, the American government determines that at least 2 of the suicide bombers in Kansas City were actually domestic terrorists, not foreign nationals, and thus were not smuggled into the United States by the cartels. To quell tensions with Mexico, the Secretary of Defense orders the CIA to abandon the mission. Learning that Isabel witnessed the Americans shooting the Mexican police, the Secretary orders the team to erase all proof of American involvement by killing Isabel and Gillick. Graver in turn warns Gillick and orders him to kill Isabel, but Gillick refuses and turns rogue in order to keep her alive. Both have found shelter in an isolated farm in the desert for the night. Gillick knows that if they stay in Mexico, she will be killed. With few resources, they disguise themselves as illegal immigrants and pay human traffickers to help them re-enter the United States. Graver and his team fly covertly into Mexico, tracking a GPS device Gillick has activated and embedded into Isabel's shoe.
I didn't realize they wanted him to kill the girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt Graver says specifically, like, yeah, take her out.
I don't know if he
It's-
said it like that.
It's
What
kind
did
of
you
like
think he was doing for the rest of the movie?
I thought Gillick was saying, we're cutting ties, drop the girl, leave her there, and come back.
she said clean it up.
Yeah, I thought it was
So-
like, just like, leave her.
Well,
Just
it was
drop
because
Give
they
her a bath and get out of there.
Yeah, what?
so they
what is
said,
this,
well,
Leon?
No, that was Leon,
right.
sorry.
It's kind of the nice thing is okay. I kind of like that though because I love when characters will tiptoe around saying kill her because
Yeah.
it means that there's a little bit
there's
of
a-
conflict
yep.
there.
They're
Like,
like,
you
they
can't
don't want to-
say kill her, just
'Cause
clean
that makes
up
it
the
real,
evidence.
like,
yeah.
almost.
So they like I actually really like that, but it is obvious when you listen to the dialogue where she's saying, "And the girl, did she see everything?" And they're like, "No, we had her blinded for the kidnapping." And she said, "Yeah, but did she see the, police situation?" And they're like, "Yes." It's like, "All right, I need you to clean this up, and
Yep.
then yeah." So
And I think they, like, softened Alejandro's character a little bit in this one while making Graver maybe a little more cutthroat.
yeah.
Ooh, I actually think Graver was softened as
I was
well.
agreeing.
And by the end, I think he makes a choice that does soften him.
No, even before that, because in the first one, he seemed like sociopath. And then
No, he has a moment in this one where he literally, like, forces a guy to watch his own family be bombed.
yeah.
Like, I'm like, that is sociopathic.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
He also,
So,
like,
no. More
Day of
what
the
I was
Soldado, which one's the soldier? Gillick and Matt.
more what I'm talking about is in attitude, because in the first one he's kind of hiding behind this persona of being this very amiable guy, and then you realize later, oh crap, he's actually not good.
he's evil.
Yeah.
I think we get more time with these characters, whereas in the first film, they're almost like shadows of a person where you want to learn more,
Well-
but you're more focused on Kate's perspective.
We see
Yeah.
more
Well,
facets
here-
of Alejandro because they basically, even Matt tells him, this is your time, it's on you, go get
Right.
it, turns him loose. So now
Yeah.
this is his time to do basically the actual redemption for his family and
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, here's the clear flip-flop that I see of these characters.
No, it's
The
actually
Crocs.
a croc. There we go. Same joke. 2 times in a row now.
But Alejandro in this one is not willing to kill children,
Yeah.
Yeah.
whereas Graver is. In the first one,
He didn't kill children.
Alejandro
did.
He gave a
kills
thumbs up, though.
a couple of children at that dinner table. At the
No,
end
no,
of the
no,
first
no.
one.
Alejandro does. Graver doesn't.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
that's what I'm saying. No, this is I'm talking about the switch here. So in the first one, Alejandro kills kids, and Graver doesn't. In this one, Graver is more than willing to pull the trigger, hey, kill the kid. Whereas
Wait.
Alejandro's like, no, I'm gonna save the kid.
The girl, Alejandro was going to kill the girl in this one,
right,
but
right,
because
right,
Graver
right.
told him to,
Here's
but he
the
doesn't want to
question.
because it reminds him of his daughter.
This is another issue though that like is brought up, especially with things of war and everything. Is it's easy to tell someone else to execute without having to see it or do it yourself.
Yeah.
But when you're in that position, like,
can't
is
do
it
it.
so easy?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Someone
It's basically
can
the
do
same
it.
as
At the
me
same
telling
time-
somebody else to eat healthy, but
Yeah.
when it comes down to me doing it myself,
Nah.
can't do it.
4 beers.
All right,
What were
I
you
think
saying,
Alejandro-
AJ?
one
I
beer
think
for you.
Alejandro
5 for
also
me.
kind of knows that the writing's on the wall for him, whether he follows the order or not.
Right.
So he's like basically at the end of his rope. So he's going to go rogue regardless.
Right.
So might as
And-
well.
Did we get to that call where they're actually talking?
Yes.
Okay. Because this is something that while their characters were slightly different from the first one, I really liked it.
Yeah.
I loved that development of him, Alejandro, being, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm gonna protect this girl and try
Yeah.
and save her.
There
And
are-
then this guy saying like, well, I can't help you, but I won't hinder you.
Professional
many-
courtesy.
Good moments in this second half, and I think one of the things that this movie manages to do that is similar to the first film is at some point in the movie you realize that, oh, I'm not watching this for the reason that I thought I was,
Yeah.
you know. And with this movie you're thinking, oh yeah, you know, terrorist plot, the government's involved, blah blah blah. But then halfway through you realize, oh no, we are now zoning in on, this is Alejandro's quest, basically. Like, we are focusing more on his character and this kind of change that's happened
Yeah.
with him.
It's almost a redemption arc
And
of
I
sorts.
love it.
it is.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like you realize that, you know, the government involvement, even Mexico's involvement are kind of irrelevant. Like, it's not about the drug cartels necessarily
more
anymore.
personal.
It's more personal, and I enjoy that switch. So one of my favorite scenes, which surprised me, was when he finds the deaf guy.
Yeah.
And he starts communicating with him, because like that moment actually made me feel more for Alejandro's character than
anything
in
the first movie.
else.
Because you're
Yeah.
able to tie him to something
and
human.
it's all silent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
In the first movie, he's kind of like, you get the sense that he has this, like, something dark happened to him and his daughter died. But you don't see kind of the human qualities to that
Right.
character because he's so shut
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
you know?
There's that moment when they're signing and he goes, "Oh, your daughter is deaf," and before he even signs it, you know he's going to sign.
He's like, was. But
Yeah.
also,
Over the shoulder.
shout out to that actor who's only there for, like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, a minute or so.
Yeah, he does a
but
good
he
job.
does such a good job. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that scene. And this whole
Yeah.
kind of like respite from the violence, I think, is really good that they have in their house. And they're just kind
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
it's a breath before
It
the
felt-
final storm.
It's strangely to me, this felt a little like Logan, you know,
That's-
where it's
yeah.
just kind of,
That's what I was
you know,
feeling,
your
too.
days are numbered, but you're kind of just trying to save this young person and get them as far as you can.
Yeah.
Like I've said before, this one is very different tonally than it is, or than the first one, but I like it. This one
Yeah.
feels a lot more hopeful, strangely.
Yeah.
Than the last one does. The last one's really bleak and you know, it's very, very tense. But this one has a lot of tense situations happening, and maybe you don't feel the tension as much. But
Right.
there's, you know, a light at the end.
Yeah, the first one, you're right, and I hadn't actually thought about it. The first one's very morally gray across the board, and this one is like, it's trying to redeem some of these characters, showing that they can find redemption and they can have moments of true heroism, even though
Right.
they've done terrible things.
Unless you're in the cartel.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Both Graver and Gillick at the end of this movie do something that can only be called heroic. Where
Yeah.
in the first movie is not really the case.
Is there anything important happened in the scene that we should talk about?
So this starts to get into how Gillick and Isabel start to kind of disguise themselves as immigrants.
Oh, that's right.
But that really comes into fruition in the next part of the story.
Well, I like the fact that it's at this point that she starts trusting him. Like, this is the turning point where before she seems like she's eyeballing Gillick the whole movie.
Right.
Like, this guy is shady, up to no good. Like, she seems questionable. And then when he finally shows that side of himself when he's signing to the other character and trying to be down to earth, she's like, oh, I think it was trustworthy.
Yeah, it was the stuff he alluded to about his daughter too. Is like it's just, oh, this person is human. Since he had this daughter in this situation, he's not going to hurt me.
Yeah,
right.
So she starts to trust him more because of that.
Yeah, and I like the fact that moving forward, they start building a story together. It's not just like her fighting him pulling her along. It's they working together.
Yeah. AJ, you want to move on with the story?
At the point of departure, Miguel, a young Mexican-American who has been recruited as a coyote, recognizes Gillick from an encounter in a Texas parking lot 2 days earlier. He alerts his boss, and Gillick and Isabel are taken hostage. Miguel is forced to shoot Gillick, and the gang leaves him for dead. Fed up with the gang, Miguel abandons them shortly afterward. Graver witnesses the apparent killing of Gillick through live satellite imaging, and his team track down the Mexican gang, kill them all, and rescue Isabel. Graver decides to bring Isabel back to the U.S. and place her in witness protection, rather than obey his orders to kill her. Meanwhile, Gillick regains consciousness and discovers he has been shot through the cheek. He finds the dead gang members and takes one of their cars. He is chased by a gang search party, but he kills them by throwing a grenade through the window of their car. Suddenly, Mr. McFeely knocks on the door, and Mr. Rogers opens it.
No!
I was about to make a joke.
Oh, no.
1 year later, a tattooed Miguel walks to his gang's office in the Texas Mall where he had at first seen Gillick. He opens the door and is surprised to find Gillick waiting for him. Gillick says, "So you want to be a Sicario? Let's talk about your future."
All right.
Come be a Sicario on the U.S. side.
All right, so what was the first segment?
Okay,
of that?
let's talk about the whole kind of how they disguise themselves to kind of immigrate across, and they cross paths with Miguel. And so this kind of does the same thing that the first Sicario did, where the police officer kind of finally crossed paths with the main characters and bad things happened.
Granted, this is the second time they crossed paths, which made it slightly more unbelievable.
Well, yeah, they kind of had a run-in where they recognized each other, they saw each other's faces, and Miguel was ultimately able to recognize Alejandro amidst the crowd of immigrants.
And you knew that was going to happen right whenever it was the first time they saw each other.
Yeah,
you knew that was going to come back somewhere, and kind of just.
Can I say, I'm going to call back to a scene. I think the worst scene in this movie is that scene where they almost run into him in the parking lot, and Alejandro looks at him and kind of like smiles and is like, "Yeah, I like this kid." Like,
that's weird.
No, I'm sorry.
Scene, if you took that
I guess
scene
I didn't
out,
pick up on that.
It didn't look like he.
It was a
liked
look
him,
of
but-
appreciation, almost like just seeing this kid and seeing something in him. That scene is there.
I didn't see. I know the scene you're talking about. I didn't see it as appreciation. I saw it as like kind of a smugness, like what you gonna do.
Yeah.
No,
I thought
because they put this scene in there because it makes the ending scene work better. Where he's like, "So you want to be a Sicario?"
I think there are two different ways to see that, and I'll probably bring it up when we get to the final scene because I have very similar feelings, but upon rewatching it, they slightly changed. So let's see. Is there? I think one of the scenes in this part that completely threw me off, and I think it was actually another moment. Probably, I think it was Miguel's plotline more so, but the fact that he had to get in a car with this white lady and her baby.
Oh,
and they're like, "Oh yeah, get on in." I was just like, "Why would you bring your baby?" Like, I just was
Where
so
are you
confused.
going, sweetie?
maybe that helps for safety. Like,
I guess.
someone wouldn't kill
And-
someone if they had a baby with them.
But it's an interesting concept that it's like,
Nah, man.
no, it's
this
not.
is freaking Uber for
All right,
border
boys, let's
crosses.
go to war.
No, hold on.
Bring your babies.
We were talking about
Idealist.
this. I honestly feel like it is almost Uber-esque. She has been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
In her demeanor. I think honestly
In
this
her
is
demeanor?
such the way she was
Oh,
acting.
her
in-
demeanor.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, gotcha.
I think in the car she was portraying someone who has done this for a while. It pays well.
Yeah.
And she's never had any issues. She's just like, I can take my baby on this. I literally just pick up a
think
kid and drive them down the
it's
street.
just there's a layer of subtlety that the first film was able to carry across with creating a conversation like that. For instance, like the end of the film, the soccer match, then you hear gunfire in the distance and then they return. No words needed. But in this scene, it could have just been this lady picking him up, but they had this line where she says like, give me another job that pays better and I'll take it, and it's like that seems very kind of forced in there.
No, I don't think it does because it establishes the fact that she's done this.
My
This
husband
is-
no.
would be
like that's
so
the thing. That's the thing
mad.
though. If it was just a woman and her baby and she's like, hey, come in, and then
Yeah.
like pays him and then they move on, it
Yeah,
still gets the point
movie
across.
is deciding to say instead of just
Right,
show, where it's like it's underestimating its audiences.
Like
how
you could
they're
even
able
just
to
show
perceive
him
what's happening.
being taken aback, like this is weird, and
Yeah.
then she's like, "Oh, come on, get in,"
Yeah.
sort of a thing.
All right, so we are in the final stretch of this movie. This final action sequence. I want to ask y'all, when Gillick gets captured and then shot by Miguel, how many of y'all, the first time y'all watched this movie, thought he was actually dead?
I thought
did.
he was dead.
I thought he was dead.
Me too.
I thought he was dead too.
because obviously because it's stupid to assume that he isn't.
Yeah.
No.
And that's one thing, this director did it so well, or the writing was like, yeah, they literally shot him in the head.
Yeah.
And
in the face.
But then the explanation as to why he survives totally makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
he's shot
it
through
was
the
through
cheek.
the cheek.
And you look at the shot, yep, it was through the cheek. And
So-
this is like, the movie, I feel like, perfectly threaded this needle of like, yeah, they wouldn't check on his body because they shot him in the head.
I do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know too much about it. Perhaps shock would have done this, but if it was a non-lethal shot, why would he have been like completely knocked out?
Because maybe he decided to just, I'm going to lay completely still in this moment.
that is possible.
also
Or
the-
the shock of being shot in the
well,
face.
that's what.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I literally just said shock.
I think it's the shock of getting shot in the face.
But here's the thing, though. People have been
probably
shot
shock.
before, and they've had shock, but they've their bodies still reacted. Usually,
Yeah.
someone in shock is not going to instantly just pass
Yeah.
out.
But
Well,
it is possible.
We
maybe.
also don't know
know.
his history. Maybe he's been in a rough and tumble situation before, and he knows it's best to play
Yes.
dead.
Like, why would you try to like be like, oh, it hurts? Like, why
then-
would you
okay,
say
okay,
anything?
okay.
He's
But
also
then,
been
but then
drinking
you
the
bring
water
it
in
back.
Mexico. Have you ever had Montezuma's Revenge?
But then you bring it back though
I was ready to play.
to the fact that when they show him, it's the next day, and then he's like,
It's the
just
same.
waking
No,
up.
Okay.
they did it during the night, and
There-
it's the morning
There is
hours.
such
Okay, yeah,
thing
but-
as being in so much pain that you just pass out.
Yes.
And that
That is
might have
true.
happened.
I
That
think
is
that did
true.
happen.
Yeah. Think about it this way too. His character, established in the first film, he's referenced as a ghost. This
Yeah.
guy can't die. So he's basically, I think of this scene as more resurrection than like, oh, I just survived.
Yeah.
Like you
I
can
like
see it
that
as him
better.
survived, but I think the way that it's portrayed feels like he's more undead, you
Yeah.
know? So that's how I like to see it.
And yeah, I totally
No,
agree.
no, I don't.
And
I wouldn't.
wait,
I don't
wait,
want
wait.
him dead. Obviously,
I know. I think this sequence makes perfect sense in the context of this action movie situation. I think it'd be harder to sell in the first Sicario, but in this movie, I think it totally works. I do want to we haven't talked about this one character, this cartel leader or drug lord or whatever he is.
douchebag McGee.
This the guy who shoots the kid that wasn't brave enough to shoot Alejandro.
That part got me.
Dude, I love kind of the soldiers' little bit of vengeance
Yes.
there.
Yes. I guess there's not much else to say. I just wanted to acknowledge that character is in this movie.
Also,
I don't even know what his
also
name is.
a hateful guy.
Yeah. But this leads to perhaps, like, I think this movie's third act is its strongest, easily. The moment where Alejandro kind of comes back to life and he's just like in the sand and the blood, and it's just,
Oh gosh,
like, I really just
It's
believed.
so good.
they did that really well.
and when
I
he's
believe-
like breathing heavily,
I believe the trauma of the situation, and then how he just jumps in that vehicle,
Yep.
and just he can barely drive, but he just
I
pulls the
love
grenade and
that.
just like kind of haphazardly
Chucks it.
tosses it
Oh my
into
gosh,
the car.
that was so good.
That I loved that part so much.
The-
He's
the
like, I'm
camera-
in too much pain.
Yeah, the
to
camera
deal
was
with
so
this right
good
now.
though, how it just pans to like the back window and you see the car just blow up.
Yep.
So
It's
and
so
then
good.
just how he
the
pulls over
hand
to the
trembling
Yeah.
as he's
Yeah.
like at the window
and it
of
was
the car.
it was so cool to see him just kind of lose strength for a moment and then
Yeah.
drive off the side of the road and hit a little post
Yep.
or the fence.
and then muscle up and decide, okay, I just have to keep going.
Yeah.
And then this is also when Graver decides to, go against protocol and is like, no, I'm gonna help my friend. I guess they're friends.
We're
but
taking her into witness protection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
saw that as they thought he was dead.
Yeah.
And I don't think otherwise he would care about the girl. It was mostly just for his friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just seeing those Blackhawks like
Right.
trailing or catching up to those two cars on the street was just so satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
So, Reese, you had the background, like the commentary on when we arrived, and I got to hear in that part that they actually had Blackhawks land on the road real time with the actors in it.
Yep.
And then they jumped out and did the scene. We're like,
No, those are real
"What?"
Blackhawks.
Yeah.
with the
That's
with the
awesome.
actors in it. They just did it real time.
I
And
think that
F it,
also
we're doing it live.
this movie looks so good. Like that it looks great. Like
Yeah.
there are so many moments that happen, like a lot of action sequences and everything. Like I didn't even question the reality of what was happening. It all looked very real and well done and well
Yeah.
choreographed.
And just Graver just kind of breaking his
Protocol.
chill and just being like, seeing, because he's always so chill and relaxed
Yeah.
and laid back in all these situations, just to see him actually mad for once and being like,
Right.
I'm going to just
Yeah.
unleash vengeance upon these people.
That one guy like grabs Isabella and he like looks at him for a
Yeah,
moment.
he makes this half-hearted approach.
and then just shoots him.
It's like, I'm not dealing with this Joker.
Yeah.
Like,
It was like, you did nothing there.
Do you guys feel this way about the way this film was set up? Where I like while we were watching it again, it felt very, very much like a comic book. You know, like in a very positive way. Like this is something I would expect to find in a comic book version following Sicario.
I can see it.
portrayed on film.
yeah, it's like the first Sicario, and then this movie doesn't exist, but there's a comic book
Yeah,
covering the
there's something.
sequel
There's
adventures.
something about it that
Yeah, it's like,
reminds
this is
me
what
of
they
that.
went on to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I-
it's
I
almost like
definitely
a
feel that.
like a what if movie.
Right. Yes.
But it actually is the sequel.
right.
I totally see that.
That's actually an exact feeling.
Yeah. So the movie ends on what I think could have been the best scene, but ends up the worst scene. I don't know if y'all feel the same way.
Worst?
Yeah, just let him finish, I guess.
I think this scene could have been handled a lot better. Like I think it's something that was necessary to close like Miguel's story. But I think it is against character for Alejandro to do this.
I agree.
The whole time I was thinking, okay, this scene would have been perfect if Miguel like walks into his work, opens the door, sees Alejandro there sitting in the chair, and then
it cuts.
Then you see Miguel's expression like change, and he's like, "Oh crap!" And then the door closes.
Yeah.
and then the movie ends.
I would have loved that.
I would have loved that so much.
Yeah.
Because
But
he got
then-
all these tattoos, and it's like he's fully embraced the cartel at this
but then
point.
it proceeds to go a little further, and he's like, Alejandro's like, "So you want to be a Sicario?" And I'm like, "No."
Let's talk
Like,
about your future.
But I think that's against Alejandro's character. He is not. He only became a hitman to kind of right the wrongs that this drug lord did to his family.
or just
Right.
get revenge.
So
Like he doesn't seem like someone who's trying to breed more hitmen. Like
all right, so trust that feeling.
okay,
And I kind of like to approach this movie the same way you thought about the way he handled the gun, right? Mm-hmm. So it looks like a stupid move, and you're like, he wouldn't do that. So in this scene, when I first saw this movie, I thought the same thing. And I was like, no, you don't need this dumb protege. Like, don't teach him anything. But upon second viewing, it's almost like if you listen to the line, so you want to be a Sicario, it's almost sort of like sarcastic, you know? Mm-hmm. Like he's just being like, you want to be a hitman? Yeah. Oh, that what you want? Then he does sort of this eye roll, and then he moves to close the door. Let's talk about your future. It feels more like a scared straight moment, you know, where it's like, I think he might have more insight about this kid as far as like where you're coming from,
like
why
he's gonna
you
tell
think
him why
you
this is a terrible idea instead of like why you should
because
be a Sicario.
He spent the whole movie trying to protect this girl, and you know, not really. He's a subject of what happens with these drug cartels.
So that's so fascinating because, like, I guess this movie is operating at these two levels where it's like surface level, this is the dumb action movie, and then but if you actually look deeper, which I didn't, I was just like, this is an action movie. I guess maybe there is that layer there where the actual implication of that scene is that he's going to tell him why.
Yeah,
that's
but
a terrible idea.
You also don't know that, so like I don't know if that was intended for it to be ambiguous, or is it just that the direction wasn't done in the way that it needed to be for you to be clear about that message. So,
I got the same takeaway for what it's worth.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So supposing that he is planning on training a new protege, I would have much preferred for it to be Isabella. However, the other way being the case, if you assume that he was going to kind of scare him straight, I would have liked for that to have been kind of a situation in which he started that at the beginning and then he just told him a story, and now you cover up that arc. Because otherwise it just leaves open a thing where it's like, oh, I mean, I guess you can assume one or the other, but one of those situations you don't want, and the other is like, okay. If
you're to take what happened in the film as evidence about him trying to dissuade this kid, he protected this girl. He's ultimately, by the end of this, on the side of wanting to preserve life. This kid shows a moment of weakness before shooting him, which he would probably remember as, like, he doesn't necessarily want to do this.
Yeah.
Not to mention that kid jumped off of the car to separate himself from them. Yeah. Like, he doesn't necessarily want this lifestyle.
He was also forced to shoot that guy. It wasn't like he wanted to do it.
So, taking all that into evidence, I think that the intent of that moment is that he's going to redirect him in a positive direction.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't really note that he hesitated to kill the guy. It kind of felt like he was like, okay, momentary, like looking at the situation, and then he does it. But also his mentor figure, older brother figure, whatever this guy is.
Oh, he's just a kid.
He's just a kid. Let me do it. And then he like grabs the gun and is like, no, I'll do it. Pretty much. So it felt I feel like if they were trying to sell us on the fact that he didn't really want to do it more, they should have just had him have maybe a little bit more of a hesitation, or had it feel even more like he absolutely had to.
I guess what we're picking up on is that there's an element of this movie that's kind of Hollywood, but also trying to deal with realistic matters to the point where you're trying to interpret a real scenario in a Hollywood way. So I think that's what that scene is if you're under that kind of pressure and you're impressionable and you're being told this is what the group wants, this is your family, you end up wanting to do that
and
thing.
you see somebody else get shot right
exactly.
in front of your freaking
I
face.
see. I give.
So we're trying to see it through a Hollywood lens, where it's like, all right, now that kid's bad because he killed. You know, it's not black and white.
I wasn't. That's not the claim I'm making. It's more just that he had and has
I get
a
it.
track record of making bad decision after bad decision. And
That's life on the border, man.
But in all those scenarios, people have been kind of guiding his hand.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, that concludes the story portion of this podcast. On the other end, we're going to get into our brief reviews. Then we're going to talk about what critics thought, get into some box office.
Our numbered scores.
Yeah. And then talk about this franchise. So, y'all stay tuned. Welcome back. Are y'all ready to talk about Sicario, Day of the Soldado?
Yep.
All right, David, we're going to start with our reviews. You want to pull them at random from that little Tupperware container you have?
I sure will, Reese. First up, Irina with a 9.
Yeah.
Hey.
I really liked this movie. I thought it was a great follow-up to the first film. I actually kind of view them separately in a strange way. Like I said before, I almost view this one as a comic book continuation. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of giving me what I wanted as far as wanting to know more about Alejandro, and particularly Alejandro, because I just like Benicio Del Toro and I think he should have more screen time anyway. But as far as the mood, it was still somehow strangely in keeping with Sicario, and yet stood alone. I love when a director is able to follow up, but also give their own stamp on it, I guess. The reason it's not perfect, though, is I find a lot of the plot lines are a little confusing and get a little mixed up in there. That might just be my fault because I maybe just didn't take enough time to understand what was happening. Mm-hmm. Other aspects where there seems to be a blend of trying to have both a realistic scenario and a Hollywood scenario all at the same time, and I think that came through with our review of this, or while we were talking about it, because everyone had kind of a different interpretation of what was happening and whether it worked. There are movies that do that on purpose to be ambiguous and to create conversation, but this one didn't seem to do that. It was more confusing than straightforward, which is ironic because this movie does try to be more straightforward about what's happening. So, but I'm still going to give it a 9 because I would still watch this. And I think it's very well done. Most sequels can't boast that.
Yeah. All right.
Next up, Reese with a 7.5.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick with that 7.5, I think. This movie, and this score comes from a place in my mind that is separated from the first Sicario. Mm-hmm. I kind of looked at this as its own thing, but also a continuation of some of those plot lines. But this movie feels very different to me than the first one. Yeah. And different, I don't mean bad. It's just, it is
like 7.5 bad.
Yeah, and in a way I like that, because you get to see the difference in directors. Like, this is a director putting his own stamp on this franchise, and it shows. The first one, as I said, was a kind of thrilling, suspenseful drama/action movie. And this one is straight up action with moments of, drama inserted throughout. But it is definitely more tipped in the scales of your kind of typical action movie. I like and don't like the direction they took with Alejandro Gillick. I don't like that they gave him more lines. I kind of wish I'm sorry. I kind of wish they continued on with the silent thing. He's more interesting when he is more quiet. Okay. I don't like seeing him explain things. That's just goes against the Alejandro type, and especially in the ending scene where he's recruiting the kid. And I know we discussed that there might be other layers to that, but the what strikes me first is that this is really going for the low-hanging fruit of like, yeah, he actually wants this kid to be an assassin. Other than that, though, I really like the action sequences in this movie. They really, they're full of tension, and I think they're well executed. I'm missing some of that feel from the first movie that I wanted, though, where it was just like this sense of dread going into like the bells of the beast. That's gone. Like, it's still scary going across the border, but I'm missing that kind of like the Jaws theme of like, oh, here we go. We're going into Juarez, or we're going across the border, and this is where bad stuff happens. That's taken out of this. And I think that is almost...
Is it?
Yeah, no, it's still there. Like, it's represented here, but you just don't feel it as much.
You're a little desensitized.
Yeah, it's more just like, okay, here's the next action sequence. Here's the next action sequence. Okay, they kind of do their thing, and that's what I expected.
Right.
I still liked it, though. Like, I enjoyed this movie. I think it's well done. I just don't think it is a masterpiece like Denis Villeneuve's original is. It's just a very good, taut action film with some thrilling sequences, and I kind of like how it kind of dissects some of these two main characters and kind of tries to find more, layers to them. But other than that, it's fine. I'm glad this movie exists. But I kind of agree with Irina. It's like this is the comic book follow-up. Like, where did what happened with these characters? What if this happened? It almost doesn't feel like the official sequel to Sicario.
Your review kind of reminds me of Noah and Pirates, where it's like, no, the first Pirates was perfect, and anything after that doesn't fall perfectly in line is wrong.
Well, I already said I separated myself from, I looked at this as an action film. I'm grading this against action movies.
Okay, so also in Reese's defense, coming from someone that really, really loves Sicario, that's what this movie is kind of targeting, is people that loved Sicario, you know? So,
and also in my defense, I still gave it a good score.
Yeah.
7.5, though. That's like Tomb of the Dragon Emperor level.
No, not quite.
Pretty close.
You set yourself up for this one. I think we would have forgotten this whole episode.
We probably wouldn't have.
I will never forget.
Me either. David, who notoriously gave The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, a 7 out of 10.
Wait, why did you give it a 7?
It was rewatchable, and it had Yetis who played football.
The funny thing is, the rewatchable aspect is what I quoted, but you guys added in the Yetis and football.
No, you mentioned Yetis. I'm pretty sure.
I don't think I did.
You probably did.
Maybe.
Rewind the tapes.
You said it reminded you of your
You should
childhood.
rewatch it to find out.
Oh, gosh, I really don't. You know what? We should do like a YouTube episode where we all re-listen to that full episode.
That is a good question. David, since reviewing that film, how much have you rewatched it?
Got him there.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyway, goes to sleep to it.
Anyway, to cap off my review, Sicario, Day of the Soldado, a good movie, just not as good as the original.
I understand.
All right.
It has certain things with it that they're kind of like, I wish they had taken that in a different direction. But for the most part, I really enjoyed it.
All right. Next up is AJ with an 8.5.
All right.
So, fittingly, I'm pretty much a blend between Irina and Reese here. Let's see if I can put it in my own words. So we have the meat and potatoes of what Sicario was, and it's well cooked. The steak has a good sear on it, but unlike where the first one, it was perfectly seasoned, had that marinade, and everything, like down to the subtlety, was just on point. This one didn't have those fine details. Still an enjoyable meal, but the subtlety was definitely missing, and the tension was missing, and that's what brought it down to 8.5 for me. I still like the movie. I enjoyed seeing Matt and Alejandro expanded. I'm kind of with Reese. I wish Alejandro didn't open up as much as he did. I wanted to see him stay a little bit more true to character while still kind of exploring some of his deeper personality and stuff. I mean, it could have been done in a way that still fit his character, and we could have seen a little bit more from Matt as well. And Miguel, I get where they're coming from, but it wasn't as impactful for me as it was for Silvio and for the first movie. I did enjoy Isabel's performance. I thought she was good in her role. So overall, good movie. It was great looking. The cinematography was great. And there's still good action in it. But there is, kind of that mismatch of the jumble of, I think, just going for more action instead of the introspectiveness of it. So, but by no means a disservice of a sequel for the first one.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Next up is Noah with an 8.
That's me.
All right.
Yeah, I thought this was a really good movie, and pretty much the only places where it somewhat lacks is in kind of the negative space between this and Sicario, the first one, as y'all have said before. That being, kind of a loss of tension. The tone is different. There's more action. Maybe not like more action, but it's just, a different kind of action, I suppose.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the second half of this movie a lot more than I enjoyed the first half. And I still appreciated the first half, but the second half I thought was just, at that point, they got all their stuff together. The plot was moving forward in the way it had to. Mm-hmm. And all the characters were being kind of expanded upon in a really accurate way to, I think, how their characters would be expanded upon if they had decided to do that.
I'd agree.
I'd
agree.
I don't know. I just really appreciated the whole father daughter kind of thing that they had going on with the girl, and then Irina was talking about it earlier with him going to the house with the deaf guy.
Yeah.
I just, those little emotional tidbits are really good for me. It's a different kind of vibe from the first one, for sure. Like, the first one, you wouldn't have seen Alejandro being all emotional, and you probably wouldn't have seen Graver get all, I guess, vengeful for his friend and then ultimately decide to do a good thing and do that. He probably would have just, gone mission forward.
Yeah.
If you had his version from the first one. So even though it's kind of not accurate to how the first one set up their characters, I appreciated the way in which they did it.
Yeah.
So I'll keep it 8.
All right.
All right.
Ending on David here.
Ending on David. We end at an 8.5.
Yay. Wow, I'm the highest.
You are. So hard to touch on things when you're last and everyone kind of talks on the
Yeah, I
things
know
you
what
like.
you mean. You're kind of scraping at the end of the barrel.
Look, it's a good movie. I remember when I first saw it, I may have gave it a 9 after I first saw it. I am not as keen on picking up on cues as Reese is, so I didn't really notice there was a directorial change. The cinematography wasn't that different in my perspective. I thought that it overall was just, it felt very much like a continuation of the first movie, and I thought that it was awesome that you got to learn more about Alejandro's character. I think that Graves kind of expands a little bit more, but there is something missing throughout the movie, and I couldn't quite tell what it is, and I think that maybe it was something to do. I don't think it's necessarily Emily Blunt's character, but the fact that there's nobody to root for. There's nothing, and that's not a requirement for everybody, I don't think. I think for me, it's something that I look for. This whole movie, you're like, everybody sucks. Literally everybody except for Alejandro, kind of. I mean, he's still going about this stupid mission to draw a war between drug cartels. That's bad. That's not good. And his only redemption is trying to save this girl that reminds him of his daughter. But in the end, it's still just like everybody's a villain. I mean, you have that picture, the logo that you imagine from the movie, where you have the skeleton holding the 2 flags and the guns pointing in different directions. You have the U.S. flag and the Mexican flag. It's all bad. And so it just leaves me kind of with an empty feeling in my stomach. Yeah, that was a good movie. It was well made. but it leaves me feeling bad. I don't know. It's not a movie I want to come back to again, really. I mean, because it's well made and I do like Benicio Del Toro, I could see myself seeing it again, but it's heavy, and it doesn't have the heart I'm looking for. So 8.5 for a really good movie, missing that 1.5 for having that connection to real life that I need morality in.
Yeah. All right. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
All right. Our group average is 8.3, which puts it below The Hateful Eight. And we've got a bunch of 8.2s. We've got Dread, Interview with the Vampire, Die Hard with a Vengeance, The Road to El Dorado, and Treasure Planet. All those are 8.2.
Dang. Wow. All right. Pretty high score for Sicario de Soldado, in my opinion. Like, I'm happy for it.
It's a good movie. You're the low score.
I know. I was not expecting that. I thought I would be smack dab in the middle of the pack here.
You were not.
Nope, I was not. I was the lowest. That's fine. I still really like this movie. That's the funny thing. Like, it seems like I'm on the low end, but
I know. Yeah.
Oh, let's segue. I think audiences are on your side from what I can recall.
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, I think this is probably the best sequel you could ask for off the first Sicario, which to me is it's directed by an auteur, and it's got literally top tier talent, top to bottom. And it is literally, in my mind, a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. And you would think a sequel directed by anyone else would just completely fall flat on its face, and this one manages to, hold its own. It's not as good as the first one, but it doesn't completely collapse like Columbiana does.
Yep, I think we all agree on that.
I wasn't going to say anything.
All right, let's move on to critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 63%, which is fresh, and an audience score of 65%, which is also fresh, but still kind of on the lower end of fresh. On Metacritic, this movie has a 61 out of 100, which is deemed generally positive, but if it had gotten 1 point lower, it would have been categorized as mixed reviews, so it's just barely in the positive tier there. The audience score on that end is 7.0 out of 10. And on IMDb, this movie has a 7.1 out of 10. So, as you'll notice, this movie is consistently in that upper 6s, lower 7s range of, somewhat positive. So people generally like this movie, but they don't love it like they did the first one. Pretty much how...
That surprises me a little bit, though.
Yeah.
I expected critics to at least be in the more upper bracket.
But it's a net positive. It's still a net positive. I'm happy with it.
Wait, critics were what? Like low 60s, mid 60s?
Yeah, they were in 60s.
That's pretty low for I feel like this movie deserves from critics.
It's still in the green, though. That's what's important.
Green versus not green. I don't know.
It's still in the green. I'm happy with that. I'm glad they didn't trash this movie.
Yeah.
They easily could have.
No, I mean, I'm glad they didn't, but they could easily trash any movie. I'm just surprised, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Box office. This movie released on June 29th in 2018 against Uncle Drew, a basketball movie.
I'm sorry, I have no idea what that is.
I actually know. It was when they took a younger basketball player and they made him look old, and then they made him a basketball
I remember
player.
the trailer.
I remember it too.
Okay.
But what was already playing in theaters were Jurassic World: The Fallen Kingdom and Incredibles 2. So 2 sequels to huge movies.
I saw that Jurassic Park.
And what was that, AJ?
I think Ocean's 8 was around that time as well.
Ocean's 8, yeah, it might have been in the mix there too. The movie was budgeted at 35 to 45 million. On Box Office Mojo, it's listed as 35 million. On Wikipedia, it shows a range of 35 to 45 million. So probably somewhere in the middle there. Mm-hmm. Let's just say 40 million. What do y'all think this movie did worldwide at the box office? Let's start with AJ.
Summer.
June 29th, so kind of getting to the later end of summer.
But up against Jurassic. I know the first one was well received, but
kind of
obviously critics and audiences alike didn't care for this one. I'm going to say double again. would you say 35, 40, so 80?
80 million for AJ.
Yeah.
Noah,
What did you say the budget was?
40 million.
40, around 40 million. It's between 35 and 45 million.
I'm gonna go 120.
120. Irina.
I'll do 75 this time.
All right, David.
I think on the last one I aimed really high. I'm going to aim really low on this one. I'm going to say 55.
Irina, you're like 3 for 3.
Dude.
The movie did 75 million worldwide.
Okay, I swear I am not looking.
I know. I believe
Wasn't it like 75 last time?
No.
The last one was like
Wait,
80.
really?
I think it was like 80.
Yeah, I thought it was. more.
Irina's key to success. Guess 75 each
No,
time.
the last one was the last one was 85.
Right.
The last one was 85.
Gotcha. Close.
So yeah, 75.8 million, so closer to 76 million. This movie cost a little bit more, made a little bit less.
Sad.
But not it. This movie's not a bomb.
Yeah,
mind you, it's not a bomb.
Much to never mind. I
Well,
was
the
gonna
thing
make
is,
a joke about bombings.
The first
in
movie cost
but-
first movie cost 30 million. This one cost 35 to 45 million. They didn't increase the budget that much, and it actually did better domestically than it did than the first one did. The first one made like something like 46 million. This one did 50 million. But overseas, it kind of crumbled a little bit. Less people overseas or internationally saw this movie. But despite this kind of box office disappointment, like it lost 10 million or it was down 10 million from the previous movie, that did not stop people from, proclaiming, or at least the creators of this movie saying that there would be a third film. In 2018, I think right before the release of this movie, the creators of this film were interviewed and they stated that, this is like second in this planned trilogy of Sicario films. Taylor Sheridan, the writer on the first and second movie, had already kind of put into place plans for a third film. But since then, it's kind of fizzled. Granted, it's only been 3 years, but we haven't really heard anything since then. There was some talk last year about the film, the next film, potentially being called Sicario Kapos, I believe, which means hood. So there's still, I think there's still some discussion about this movie, but nothing has been made public about a potential third film yet. There's just kind of little bits and pieces here like, oh yeah, maybe that'll happen. But if there is a third one, it still seems like it might be a ways off.
Right. It's such an interesting thought that Sicario would warrant sequels,
It doesn't feel like that kind of movie.
Doesn't.
There are so many movies out there that seem obviously franchisable, but this one is like, that's so random to choose this one to continue.
Yeah. I actually think before the pandemic, they actually planned to start filming this movie in like the spring or summer of 2020, I believe. And then that just kind of like put it on the back burner yet again. But yeah, after Soldado, I feel like that leaves open ends that I want to see fulfilled. Like after seeing the first Sicario, I wouldn't have thought this movie needed a sequel.
I would have thought that was it.
But then the second kind of opens it up again, and I'm like, no, I want to see this trilogy.
Why when I saw it, I wasn't expecting it. Like I wasn't even thinking of Sicario. Watching Sicario, you think, oh yeah, that's it. There's nothing more.
Movie.
But yeah, I do want to kind of see the alternate reality where like I want to be able to view Sicario, the first one, as its own thing, but then also the alternate path where Sicario is a trilogy.
Yeah.
I want to see that fulfilled. But right now, I would give it. I don't think we're getting a third Sicario, not anytime soon. I put the odds at. I'll be slightly optimistic, 40%. I'm going to say 40% chance we see a sequel to Day of the Soldado. So that kind of trends towards like no, but I'd like it.
Yeah.
But there's really nothing that we can pick up on that really indicates that they are really pushing forward with this third film. So there you have it. Sicario, dead at 2. Or at least dormant at 2. So let's move on to honorable or dishonorable. Sicario, Day of the Soldado. Does this end the franchise on an honorable or dishonorable note? And for those of y'all that are new, honorable means that this franchise ended on a satisfying note and does not need to be continued. The movie does not end on a note
cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger that needs to be resolved. And dishonorable means that this movie cannot stand on its own, or this sequel does not stand on its own. It demands a follow-up. All right. Honorable or dishonorable for Sicario, the franchise?
It hurts to say.
I think it's dishonorable.
It's dishonorable.
Yeah.
I also think it's dishonorable. If it were just the first Sicario, I think it would be honorable. But this one really opens it up to
What do you
something
think,
bigger.
AJ?
The ending, though.
I'm going to be an outlier. I thought it was honorable. I think that it's not optimal, but there's not a terrible amount of loose ends that need, like, just absolutely demand to be opened back up or pursued.
I could see that.
I think the big loose end is that they've instigated this war between cartels, and we don't really find out what
That's
happens.
true.
Like Isabel.
Not only that, she's taken back into witness protection. We don't know the ramifications of that. And then even further, they didn't complete that scene with Miguel as well.
Yeah.
So there are like 3 different things happening that weren't fully wrapped up. Even if, the main story arc is finished, the world is open to a lot of
and also Reyes, like, apparently now is Alejandro's arch enemy, like the one above the guy that he killed in the first movie, still remains alive. And if he is grooming Miguel to be this new Sicario, you have to imagine the end game of that is that they're going to take down Reyes. So I think that, like, this is a dishonorable, unfortunately, for me.
I need to know that Reyes is brought to justice.
So I think we have 4 dishonorable votes and 1 honorable vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about it. It's hard.
Not that it matters. I do think
my vote wouldn't matter anyway.
Not the
because
border?
It's still...
The thing is, I still find this to be a very satisfying movie. I just think it does open up things that are, like, unresolved. So yeah, I think we're gonna go with dishonorable on Sicario Day of the Soldado, or Sicario the franchise.
This whole, like, honorable, dishonorable is very interesting.
I know.
Because, like, even if you like a movie, it doesn't make it honorable.
Yeah, this is not. It is not a stamp of approval of a movie. It is just like
or disapproval.
Yeah,
because our franchise average is a 9.1, so obviously.
Yeah. We
So it
like
has to
these
be
movies.
good.
We like these movies. All right, dishonorable for Sicario Day of the Soldado. We still like this movie, but it does not complete the Sicario
It
arc.
opens up questions.
Maybe this is us just saying, hey, finish out the story. Do the third one. I want to see how the story ends. All right, but with that, this is the end of our Vigilante / Hitman with a Heart series, which means we are moving on to a new mini-series, and it is very different than this one. So this next series, proposed by Noah, is very Greek mythology based. But don't mistake that for Sword and Sandal, because this one kind of goes all over the place.
Well, there are people with swords and people with sandals.
Yeah, but then not all across the board.
Sometimes both.
So without revealing the full slate of films that we'll be covering, the first franchise that we're touching on is, and let's silence and then sigh. Let's do it. Is Percy Jackson.
Yeah, buddy.
The Lightning Thief.
There it is. A two film franchise that, man, I can't wait to talk about.
The one everyone was asking for.
But guys, I promise there are more diverse options throughout the series that hopefully
Very diverse.
you'll tune back in for. But that's not to discount our discussions of Percy Jackson. Who knows? Maybe I'll come around and love
It's
this
really
movie.
good.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, maybe I'll love it.
Or
You
really
don't have
bad,
to love
maybe.
it.
And
for the
even if I
episode to be
don't,
good.
even if I don't love it, it's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah, it will.
And drinks will likely be involved.
It will.
They will be involved.
They will be.
Why-
Yeah.
All right. Next week, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
No. Next up, awards.
Yeah, but
Well, that's a bonus.
that's the next week.
It
you're still
will be
getting
in
it.
between.
It's a bonus. It'll be.
I
It'll
feel
be in
like
between.
we should say something.
No. Yeah. So our next actual official episode is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, but we will be holding a awards show for our Hitman / Vigilante series, and that will be released kind of around the same time, although this will probably be the last one you'll be able to listen to because we are going to start our Patreon account. And from then on,
Listen
our
to for
award
free.
yeah. From then on, our awards shows will be released on that platform. So yeah, enjoy this next one. And if you like it, you can revisit on our Patreon and
support us.
Or if you like anything else that we do.
Yeah, each
want
miniseries
us to keep
will
doing it.
end. Yeah, each miniseries will end with an awards show, and that will be available on the Patreon. So, with that said, that is the end of this episode. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Is that your brother? Because I don't want to kill the pool guy.